Incident management at work. Topics to be covered in this module. Emergency first aid at work. Roles and responsibilities of a worker when an incident occurs. Do's and don'ts in an emergency. Questions to ask yourself. What are the dangers? Is it safe for you to go up to the casualty? What has caused the accident or situation? What do you think the main injuries could be? How to make the area safe? How to assess the casualties? Fires. The elements of fire. Leaving a burning building. Clothing on fire. Smoke and fumes. Electrical incidents. Caution. Breaking contact with electricity. High voltage current. Low voltage current. Lightning. Water incidents. Caution. Rescuing a person from water. Emergency first aid at work. We have briefly covered the different levels of the first aid tuition, FAW, First Aid at Work, and Emergency First Aid at Work, EFAW. EFAW differs somewhat from FAW inasmuch as the skill set needed is expected to be for a workplace that falls into a low-risk category. First aiders will be expected to deal with more minor injuries and have a basic awareness of emergency treatments. We can broadly summarize this as recording accidents, contacting emergency services, and preventing cross-infections. Apply first aid to an employee who may be choking, bleeding, or suffering from shock, or an adult casualty who is unconscious, including seizure. Apply resuscitation to an employee who may be unconscious. Give appropriate first aid treatment for minor injuries such as cuts, bruises, burns, and scalds. Act appropriately during an emergency and provide as much medical assistance as deemed possible. Roles and responsibilities of a worker when an incident occurs. During an emergency or accident, a worker trained in EFAW will be expected to play a significant role in the proceedings and manage the incident itself. The main responsibilities will be to ensure the safety of those injured, any bystanders, and themselves. Ensure to arrange the arrival of emergency services. Assess the situation and severity of the injuries or illness. Provide medical assistance according to their training and knowledge and according to priorities. And make a full record of all details regarding the incident and actions taken, which should be handed over to emergency services. Mandatory paperwork should also be completed. Do's and don'ts in an emergency. The best practice during an emergency will depend upon the casualties, injuries, and the type of incident. We will examine some types of specific emergencies and their treatments in the upcoming slides. But there are some common sense do's and don'ts that all first aiders should be aware of. Do's. Tell the casualty and those in the vicinity that you are a trained first aider. Remain confident and calm and explain any activities or tasks that you are performing. Gain the patient's trust and try to alleviate their pain as much as possible. Assess the severity of a patient's condition and prioritize accordingly. Maintain a good level of personal hygiene and keep yourself and those around you safe from infection. Don'ts. Don't delay in calling 999 or emergency services unless you are positive that they are not required. Don't move the injured party unless it is absolutely essential to do so. Don't forget to clear the area at the incident and ensure there is no risk to any personnel. Questions to ask yourself. What are the dangers? A first aider has a moral obligation to protect themselves from harm. Any first aid personnel should immediately assess the situation in an emergency. Look for any serious risk to personal safety, such as falling debris, hazardous materials, or violent or unstable people. If there is a genuine risk to your well-being, then you are well within your rights to remove yourself from the area and call for appropriate assistance. Only stay on the scene if you are satisfied that there is no personal risk involved. After all, no one will wish for any further casualties if they are preventable. Is it safe for you to go up to the casualty? After the initial risk assessment at an emergency scene and the confirmation that there are no immediate dangers, a first aider should check whether they are able to fully approach the casualty or not. This will depend on the status of the environment, accessibility, people in the vicinity, etc., and the condition of the patient, distressed, in extreme pain, etc. If the casualty is fully conscious, try to obtain consent before you touch or approach them. Also, be fully aware of your surroundings, but only move the patient if it is absolutely vital to their well-being. What has caused the accident and situation? If the cause of an accident is not immediately obvious, a first aider must determine if there is any risk of a reoccurrence, falling debris, etc., and react accordingly. If the danger has passed or been fully mitigated, then treatment can proceed as applicable. Even if the cause of an accident or illness cannot be categorically identified at the time, every detail and event should be recorded via an accident book or other documents to aid future investigations and treatments. What do you think the main injuries could be? In some cases, such as burns and cuts, the severity and placement of an injury can be quickly identified, but a first aider should never take things purely at first sight. Always communicate directly with the patient if possible and get as much information as possible. Also, take into consideration observations such as visually obvious clues such as bleeding, scratches, swellings, deformities of the body, etc. Loss of sense or feeling in any part of the body. Audible problems with their breathing. Ongoing pain or discomfort in a particular part of the body. How to make the area safe. Although the initial assessment from a first aider should determine any risks or danger at the scene, they should also ensure that the area remains safe to themselves, the casualty, and everybody else. Therefore, they should ensure that the area is as clear as possible and not susceptible to any interruptions or further incidents. To that end, the first aider should check on the normal use of the area and whether it would be appropriate to apply warning signs or borders, particularly when vehicles or bystanders may be involved. If the area is believed to be unsafe, then and only then should the casualty be moved somewhere else. How to assess the casualties. If the patient is conscious, it is extremely important that you communicate with them as much as possible and get feedback on their well-being. An existing health condition, diabetes, asthma, etc., have an impact on their status and your assessment. Also, check on the following aspects of the casualty. Attention span. Do they become dizzy or periodically lose alertness? Taking all those questions into consideration should allow any first aider to provide an accurate assessment of an emergency situation.